Today we're taking a look at a gamepad with anti-stick drift magnetic Hall effect thumbsticks, meant to work with PS4 and PC. However, with converters or adapters, you can get this bad boy running on Xbox Series S and X, Nintendo Switch, and PS5 to play PS4 games. This is going to be a very in-depth review, broken down part by part, component by component. There's going to be timestamps which are reflected in the description, as well as the timeline of the video, so feel free to jump around as we take a look at the Spark N5 from QRD. I'll be at the finish line blowing the whistle. I think I'm still a little bit loopy because we just hit 100K subscribers today. Blew my nips back a little bit. This is your controller captain. We've reached 6,900 feet. Go ahead and start flicking the sticks and mollywopping the back paddles. You don't like back paddles? How about those rear buttons? We've tested almost 100 custom and premium controllers, and we're only at the beginning. You need a thumbstick guide or tutorial on how to overclock your controller? Check out the controller playlist. Bing bong. Controller captain out. A quick disclaimer for my audience, the Stallions and Stallionettes. This controller was sent for review, but this is going to be an honest, comprehensive review. I haven't been paid or told to say anything about it, so if there's any cons, shortcomings, or areas of improvement, you're going to hear about it. So these companies make better products over time. As for the packaging, included accessories on the QRD Spark N5, white and blue branding. It is going to be wrapped in some plastic sneeze guard. The key features are stamped on the front: Hall effect joystick, 6-axis gyroscope, 9-color RGB lighting, and programmable turbo and macro function. Then on the side of this ride, it's reminding you that this does have wireless connections, touchpad, but by golly, I should hope so, considering it's a PS4 controller. Long service life, that's because of those Hall effect thumbsticks, which are virtually stick drift proof. Ergonomics, well, there's a comfort section later in the video that'll be the judge of that, and multiple vibration function, meaning you can actually dial in the strength of the vibration motors directly from the controller with a function button. Flippity flap in the front, lifts up from the top, couple of foam rings around your thumbsticks to keep them in place. I love to see that. Controller held very snug in place with this plastic, no laser cut foam or anything crazy like that. And then underneath that plastic tray, you are going to have your clip. You know what you do with this thing. Snip on your phone. My God, that was loud. Then you got a discount bin USB-C cable, 6 foot, rubber, not microfiber or braided, no dust covers. This will work for charging, but you're probably going to want to bring your own cable if you're going to be playing with this thing wired. And luckily you can do that, as this is not permanently affixed or proprietary or anything crazy. Your instruction manual pamphlet or brochure, which opens up like a little accordion and actually has quite a bit of information. Decent font, English is the primary language. Couple of pictures or diagrams in there. Not huge, but still legible. As for the cosmetics or appearance, this is a pretty bland or boring controller. You do have some pretty flashy face buttons, which I do like, and once you power the controller on, you are going to have some lighting around the thumbsticks and those face or action buttons, which really does liven up this controller that otherwise looks a little bit meh. And as for the rump or tuchus, it doesn't look terrible. I will say it would look substantially better with the sticker removed and maybe put at the bottom or just non-existent. But I understand this has to be on there for regulatory information and also to have the serial number and all that other fun stuff. Cosmetics are going to be a 3 out of 10. Repeat, a 3 out of 10. If the king isn't parked in his usual throne, I am reviewing a gaming chair on the channel currently, which I used to do quite frequently over the last couple of years. Kind of cooled my heels, my jets a little bit, focus on controllers or gamepads, but damn, I got my back and crack parked in this Boolies chair right now. Shouldn't be reviewed in the near future. I don't know why I said their name like that. Boolies, just fun to say. Yeah, I live out in the boonies and I'm sitting in a Boolies. I don't know where I was going with that. Anywho, ergonomics or comfort, this is a freakishly comfortable controller because it is very reminiscent, the shape and shell design of an Xbox One or Series controller, except it's bigger, it's spaced out. So it seems like they were definitely trying to appeal to that American demographic with those large, meaty hands that y'all have, those bunch of bananas, those bratwursts at a backyard barbecue wrapped around these palm grips, which I will say are pretty goddamn slick. They didn't have to go with rubber coating because that adds to the build cost, but maybe some stippling back here? There is nothing. Probably the slipperiest controller I've ever held. Granted, I'm not one of those to really get all buck and up in walls about grip because you're just holding a controller in your living room. It's not like you're swinging this thing overhead like a lasso. Other than that, this is insanely comfortable, and I would say if you have medium to larger size hands, this should be a gamepad that you look at for the PC side of the house because it's really fanned out, really spaced out. I was a little bit worried that this degree of cocked outness with the palm grips was a little bit too aggressive, but it's really not. Your wrists don't need to be dislocated to hold it or anything, and it feels pretty good in long gaming sessions. It feels basically like an Xbox One controller that was inflated or bloated by 15 to 20%. And this bloated bad boy is going to land itself an 8 out of 10 as I feed it some Pepto-Bismol. As for the perceived build quality, it's not fantastic. This feels incredibly cheap or chintzy. I don't know if that's a real word, chintzy. I use that to describe cheap feeling controllers quite frequently on the channel, and it really does fit the bill here.
this is acceptable too.
This might be one of the lightest controllers I've ever held, popping up on screen in grams here, or ounces, or just a really weird random unit of measurement popping up right here. Panel gap between the faceplate and rear shell isn't huge or anything like that. This 3.5mm headphone jack does look a little bit cheap, and there is a little bit more play in these rear paddles than I'd like to see. Actually, a lot more. You can kind of shift them around side to side, and I don't know if that's supposed to happen. This looks like a cheap gamepad. It smells like a cheap gamepad. It feels like a cheap gamepad. It tastes like a cheap gamepad, and it is a cheap gamepad, budget or entry level segment, and you feel that here in the build quality segment. So I'm gonna give perceived build quality a 3 out of 10. I wouldn't drop this on a hardwood floor, I'll tell you that right now. As for the D-pad or direction buttons on the Spark, they definitely cut costs in the D-pad and face buttons department to make room for those Hall Effect thumbstick modules and those triggers. That's definitely where the build cost is allocated, and that's a good thing. These face or action buttons, they're not terrible, they get the job done. Little membrane joint, same thing with the D-pad over here. A little bit swishy, a little mushy. They went with a typical 4-point, so not one of those fancy wheels or hybrids. No swappable option, no micro switches. They're not mechanical. They're just, you know, just a damn D-pad. It works. You can select weapons with it, or if you're playing some retro games, maybe some platformers or something, it'll move your character around for you. The D-pad's gonna get a 3 out of 10. These face or action buttons, I kind of like the way they look. I don't love the way they feel, but they didn't come to me jammed in or anything. Give them a little credit where credit's due. 4 out of 10. 4 out of the 10. As for the accessory buttons, that's going to be options, share, this QDQ button, this Harry Potter lightning bolt, and this touchpad. You also have a little light bar, like the smallest LED light bar I've ever seen on a third-party PlayStation 4 controller. Then you have the mount on top for snapping on the optional cell phone clip, which the plastics there feel incredibly cheap, thin, flimsy. If you have that cell phone clip on there, one good drop, especially with the heft of your phone on there, oh boy, it's done. It's donezo. I will say the options and share buttons are in a pretty good place. They're raised far enough from the front shell. Touchpad doesn't have a weird pivot point or anything, although it's a little bit smaller than I'd like. Does have a 3.5mm headphone jack, which is great. That'll fall into the accessory button suite. Overall grade that I'm feeling here is going to be a 4 out of 10. Repeat, a 4 out of the 10. Oh, never mind. Bring that right back. It's actually going to get a 5 out of 10. Look at the speaker grill. How cool that is. There's a little pattern etched in there. Easily amused, but that does earn it an extra point. That, and also off camera, I realized how easy it is to use the function button to do a bunch of stuff on this controller. There's some pretty useful built-in onboard controls by holding down this lightning key and up and down on the left analog stick that will adjust your onboard vibration motors from 0, 33 to 70% and then to 100, so 4 selections there. Then by doing the same thing on the right, that will assign different values to the turbo function, so if you have assigned that to, say for example, the right trigger to make a semi-automatic gun fire fully automatic and it's firing sporadically for you, you dial in the turbo speed here to where it's firing correctly. Then as for that RGB lighting around backside, you have the set button. Pressing it once will switch to the different modes, and holding it down for 3 seconds will turn on or off all of the lighting except for the indicator or status light. But as for these analog sticks, thumbsticks, joysticks, front niblets, diblets, doodads, micrads, whatever you want to call them, I have a little secret to tell you. Get closer. Not that close. You stepped on my toe. That hurt. These are magnetic Hall Effect thumbstick joints that should never get stick drift for you. At least not in your bitch-ass lifetime. Your kids, when you pass on this controller, they might actually get stick drift from it because HE Hall Effect sticks, at their core, are anti-stick drift or a lot less susceptible than potentiometer thumbsticks, but you can still get stick drift with those if that recentering spring goes out on you, but that would be under heavy use years down the road, or at least should be, unless you're doing a torture test on this thing and smacking it on your desk repeatedly or something. Oh, hell yeah, brother. The rubber or silicone compound on these thumbstick caps are grippy as hell for stalkers. Clicking down L3 and R3 feels as bad as clicky and hollowy as you think it would. But as far as KontrolFreek thumbstick cap compatibility, which of course I do have an exclusive discount for you down there in the description below. These are going to be black Omnis for the Xbox One and Series, which happen to use the same thumbstick caps. You could use them, but they are loose and wiggly. They don't feel that secure. You can grab them, twist them, turn them quite easily. That doesn't make me too hopeful considering Xbox caps are the smallest millimeter-wise compared to the Nintendo Switch Pro controller and the PlayStation 4 and 5 controllers. But we're going to try it right now. Yeah, it just falls right off. Yeah, this one too. Oh, golly. So the Xbox caps do work, but they're a little bit loose and wiggly. You can take the universal route with those slip-over johns if you don't want these ones that have the little plastic dishes that snap onto the rubber. But these work better. They generally snap on more secure, and they give you a little bit more height with those risers. I finally got these thumbsticks looking somewhat presentable for you. Got them cleaned up and wearing their Sunday best, but they still don't look phenomenal. What I'm concerned about is they always snap back to a different resting value, and when I unplug this sucker and replug it, press a button to wake it up. Okay, never mind. Problem solved. That is that 0.00002 that we like to see. But let me tell you, off camera, it was so weird. It was so funky chicken. Every time I would unplug it and then replug it, press a button to activate it on the website, the thumbsticks would look like this. They wouldn't be moving. I'm trying to keep them completely still, but one would be out here, one would be over here. It was crazy. It looked like there'd be insane out of the box stick drift. Shouldn't be the case because these are magnetic Hall effect thumbsticks. Every time I plugged it in, they'd be like this, then like this. Never seen that before in my life, but now we're good here. Perfect resting value, very taut. Also pretty responsive too. Let's get that circularity test then, shall we? That little evil grin means that I like what I see here as lower number better here, just like golf, and we've got a 0.5 on the average error. So these are very accurate. Not just very circular for that one guy that said that's what the circularity test does. I know the words right there, but they're also very accurate. As for the bumpers, I did mention how slick the faceplate was, and guess what? That continues to the oil slick that they call these bumpers up here, as they no stippling or texturing, lines, dibbly dots on the triggers or bumpers, so these are stupid slick. Not really sure of the design decision here, but the bumpers are identical to Xbox One bumpers in shape and size, and because of that, they feel really good. You can actuate them with the meat of your index finger. I will say if you're using the tip of your finger to press right here, it's on a bit of a swivel or hinge mechanism where you have to use more force here than here. Some bumpers don't. I'm gonna give these bumpers a 2 out of 10. Repeat, a 2 out of 10. I don't know why I had to sing it to you, but the melody's in your ears now. And as for the ballad of these triggers, it's a little bit better of a story as these are Hall effect, so durability should be there for you. However, durability in triggers isn't a major topic of discussion because it's not a major point of failure in controllers, unlike the thumbsticks, which stick drift is very common. I will say the left one isn't faulty, but something's going on where the right one's pretty smooth, nice linear resistance, feels great, but then this one, it feels like there's actual steps or notches or something in it, especially when you're braking neutral, getting away from not being squeezed. It's like step, 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 and then you can fully pull it. It's really weird, and the more I play with it, the more that goes away and it gets broken in, I guess you will, but it was really noticeable right out of the box. Step, step, notch, click, click, bam. It was fucking weird. These triggers are going to get a 4 out of 10 for me. Repeat, a 4 out of 10. I know that's unfortunate because these are Hall effect, but that's not as big of a selling feature as you might think. As for the two rear buttons, N1 and N2, which are referred to as the macro buttons in the instruction manual, because indeed you can record 24 button macros that will have the exact timing and, well, indeed the buttons that you press. But it's going to be the same method or technique to bind just the single face button or D-pad action to those rear buttons. It would be nice if these were removable, and I will say they do feel pretty cheap and flimsy, just lifting up with hardly any strength. That's not very confidence inducing. Ergonomically though, they're in a good comfortable position where you want to naturally grip the palm grips. Your middle fingers are going to rest on these bad boys, and they're not very loud either, which I really do appreciate. So if you're playing with this next to a spouse that's passed out in bed or something, it's not going to be disrupting them. Also, I like this stippling. This texture back here provides a good amount of grip and feels good on your fingertips. The only problem is if you have medium to larger size hands, your middle fingers are naturally going to cock over, kind of drape over, and then you get this kind of not sharp, but also not smooth edge here. So you kind of have to train yourself to hold it with a modified grip and hike up a little bit like that on the rear buttons, because if you hold it like this, that's not nearly as comfortable, which you get used to pretty quickly, but just a small note. To remap or bind the N1 and 2 buttons, you are going to hold down the set button in conjunction with either N1 or N2 for a few seconds, at which point it becomes clear as day that you are in remapping mode because you will get a flashing light. Press the button you want bound, so I want X here, and then the rear button you want it bound to. You'll get a vibration in the controller, and then all the lights on the front go solid. Repeat the process for the remaining buttons. Circle over to this guy. Cool. And in case you're wondering what can be bound to those rear buttons, they got it broken down right here. It looks like everything, even clicking down the left and right sticks, which is usually left out of a lot of gamepads. These rear paddles aren't terrible, but they're not great. In fact, I wouldn't even deem them good. They're kind of mid-grade, if you will, 5 out of 10, in fact. They're not removable. They stick out farther from the rear shell than they need to. You don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to tell the plastics that they went with aren't the most durable. Look at that flex, my God. But to give them a little bit of praise, they're quiet, can be remapped on the fly, and are pretty damn comfortable, as long as you don't have big hands. For the battery life, you do have a 1200 milliamp hour battery on board, which will get you 8 to 10 hours of playtime after 3 hours of charge time. So that's not really fast charging, but it's not slow either. And if you want to go for the high end of that 10 hours, you're going to have to turn off the RGB lighting. Plugged into the PC over here in X input test to get our stock input lag or delay, that refresh rate if you shall. And this is plug and play, already in X input. I don't need to run some program in the background like DS4 rewazed or anything like that. Let's go ahead and run it and gun it. Oh, so it's looking like 8 milliseconds. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Very interesting pattern. If you scroll through the numbers manually, you're going to see a 3.9, a 7.8, a 3.9, 77, 39, 78. Almost like the two cylinders on a Harley V-twin going back and forth. You take this timing, I'll take this timing. That's not really great for consistency. But you know what is consistent is this test. 0 outliers, meaning all of these numbers agree with each other. But the results are a little bit confusing here. Do we have a 125 hertz polling rate giving us 8 milliseconds? Do we have a 250 hertz giving us 4 milliseconds? Another in the 6 realm. Despite the fact it is not a common value, generally you see 1 millisecond, 2 millisecond, 4 millisecond, 8 millisecond. Not 6 here. That's generally not a stop that we land on. But this controller does indeed seem to have about 6 milliseconds of input lag or delay when going wired on the PC on about a 200 hertz clock. Not the most consistent, is minimum and maximum quite far from each other. And we can also see that just manually scrolling through the numbers, this awkward pattern that we're witnessing. Jitter also so much higher than it should be. So this is not great. How about going wirelessly via Bluetooth? Share and home button. Okay, to put this controller into Bluetooth discoverable mode, you're going to hold down the share button and this, where is it? The instruction manual shows a home logo. However, on the actual controller, you don't have that. You have a Q logo, but just know in your heart of hearts that that is indeed the home button. Hold down the share and home button together for 3 seconds. You're going to get flashing lights and an epileptic seizure. I'm going to add myself a Bluetooth device with this top option. If you're a Mac or PC user, you probably know how to get to your Bluetooth devices. If you don't, that is a very rudimentary or basic function of your computer. Probably look up a tutorial for. A lot of times I mix it in with my reviews. Hey, this is how to set up Bluetooth devices, which I guess we had time for because this is taking forever. It is still in discoverable mode. Something to keep in mind. This won't stay in here forever. There it is. Boom. Wireless controller connected. Lights go solid. We are ready to fudge up the competition. Well, that's a fun and funky chicken. Whenever you are connected via Bluetooth, tell you that ain't a good Bluetooth connection. It is not consistent because it's stuttering and sputtering here in Gamepad Tester. But when you go the Bluetooth route, which by the way is not meant for PC use, it's actually meant for connection to mobile devices such as iOS and Android. But when you put it into Bluetooth mode, it's noticed as a PS4 DualShock controller. That is because that's the method that you're going to be connecting to your PS4 console is with that Bluetooth connection. So it is also recognized by the PC as such. And you also have a good resting value here of 0.00392. Which is fantastic. Let's bust out a quick circularity test while we're here. Yeah, just sexy. So we are recognized as a DualShock controller connected via Bluetooth. Let's spoof the PC, shall we? We're in the switch to 360 profile. It's a default for ReWAS, which is really cool. And then hit apply to slot. Cool, we're now running that profile, which is shown down here. And we're now recognizable by the PC as an Xbox 360 controller in Bluetooth mode. Holy shit, that is inconsistent and slow as shit as well. Oh man, it's stuttering, it's sputtering. It's gonna take forever to complete because the PC's not receiving that 1,000 samples very fast. Much quicker than I thought it would be. I thought we'd be in the 20, 30 range maybe. Run it again. Holy moly. So when you are going Bluetooth, you're getting about 10 milliseconds of input lag or delay on God knows what of a polling rate. Minimum and maximum, they don't hang out with each other. They're long lost high school buddies. Jitter, higher than it has any right being. And you have these large sporadic numbers popping up to say hello to you. And those are going to pop up to say hi in gameplay as well. Needless to say, I wouldn't recommend using the Bluetooth card on board. It's probably a 3.0 or older technology. And if you are playing on the PC side of the house, just go wired. Although those speeds were pretty damn slow as well. Isn't susceptible to being overclocked though. Over here in the Lord of Mice overclocking program, in this drop down select all, and we are going to expand the child names, which is the name of the actual devices. Go ahead and full screen this. Wow, it gets bright because there's no dark theme available. We're going to be listed as an Xbox 360 controller for Windows, not overclocked on the stock clock for about 64 milliseconds of input lag or delay. And we weren't far off from it. It's a very slow connection with this controller. With this HID compliant gamepad, let's overclock the shit out of it.
I am the shield that guards from the realm of men. I pledge my life and honor to the Night's Watch.
We've said the words, we've made the sacrifice, the blood oath to the controller gods. We're going to unplug, replug, and by the graces, it should be fast as hell. It is now overclocked at 1,000 hertz for an estimated 1 millisecond of input lag or delay. I'd be shocked if that were the case, but let's test her. Negative comrades, overclocking has no effect on this controller as it is polling rate locked. As for adapter or converter support, making this controller playable on any other platforms, you can play PS4 games on PS5 and navigate the console, turn it off. For launching PS5 games, you will get that error pop-up telling you, hey buddy, use a DualSense. As for the Xbox Series S and X, you do have full support, full compatibility, both wired and wireless. Nintendo Switch also gets support with the latest NS adapter from Brook Accessories. So as for the cons, shortcomings, or areas of improvement with the P4, a gamepad I've never seen, B4, the biggest one is going to be its intended platforms. It is meant to work with iOS and Android, so if you're looking for a good mobile controller, this one is decent. However, I have reviewed mobile controllers on the channel previously that stood out a little bit more with mobile specific features such as better phone clips and applications specifically meant to integrate with phone games. Well, then you can use it on the PlayStation 4. However, that was replaced by the PlayStation 5 about 3 years ago. But if you still play on that console, there's better gamepads for you because the life cycle of the PS4 was 7+ years, and third-party manufacturers such as Scuff have been pumping out products the entire time. And if you're trying to use this as a dedicated PC gamepad, I would ask you, good sir, why? Considering you don't have to pay attention to platform limitations, and there'd be better options for you starting at $40, talking about the GameSir G7. Granted, that doesn't have Hall effect sticks, but pony up another $5 and get the SE or Special Edition variant, and that one does. Keep in mind that controller will also work for you on Xbox. Point made here, this only works on PlayStation 4 and PC, and PC doesn't even need to be mentioned because everything's going to work on PC. I haven't really encountered a gamepad yet that I can't force or finagle some kind of compatibility on PC. Maybe not this PC, maybe an older PC running an operating system that I don't feel comfortable running in 2023 because it's so damn slow and hard to navigate. So that's the biggest downside, con, or limitation, is that if you want to use this on a current console, you really can't, because even with an adapter, you're still going to be limited to PS4 games on the PS5, unless you get something like the Beloder Behavior, a $200 Pro controller that has an adapter built on board. But then if we just remove the platform limitations and focus on this as a gamepad, the plastics feel incredibly cheap and all the components are a little bit lackluster, minus the Hall effect sticks, which did perform fantastic and will be mentioned as a strong pro, but everything else just feels not fantastic. The bumpers and triggers incredibly slick, and the left trigger had that jitter issue. It's doing it right now as I'm talking. And these two rear buttons, while not the most offensive things I've glazed my fingers across, by far are not my first, second, third, fourth, or 26th choice. So as to not waste your time tiptoeing around the verdict, I simply can't recommend this gamepad for any of the platforms that it's available for because I think there's better options out there. It's unfortunate to not be able to recommend a controller that was sent for review, but sometimes that happens. Because if you're looking for a good Hall effect thumbstick gamepad, you can get one for $45 with the GameSir G7 SE, or if you wanted a wireless controller with Bluetooth like this one that will work with converters or adapters to allow you to play on all platforms, then you take a good stern look at the Fly Digivator 3 Pro, which is a hell of a gamepad at $80. But guess what? It's on sale for $60 right now on Amazon. Oh, we just set this down. The price of this controller. The P4 is linked in the description below, despite the fact I just can't give it my recommendation, my stamp and sigil of approval. But why don't you strike up a little controller conversation down there in the cesspool? It's called the comment section below. I'll jump in there and sling some snot myself, and I'll see you Stallions and Stallionettes tomorrow, because I'm really trying to get back to that daily upload schedule. Peace. If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers. This information will reach and assist them as well, which in turn helps me grow this little channel, which I do greatly appreciate. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, as well as honest gaming product reviews, keyboards, mice, headsets, controllers, mics, chairs, etc. There are some hefty exclusive discount codes found only in the description of my videos and only for the audience here at GamerHeaven. I have links to all my other platforms and socials in the description below. To get in touch with myself and the Stallions and Stallionettes of GamerHeaven, join the community Discord, and check me out at twitch.tv where I go live every other leap year on a blue moon if it falls into an odd calendar number, and my pH balance is on point. Just kidding, starting June I'm going to be live streaming a lot. Thanks for watching. This has been AK40 Kevin hosting GamerHeaven, and I'll see you tomorrow because I upload daily, all the time, 60% of the time, sometimes, most of the time. Peace.